everybody, and welcome to this morning's Job Train How Talent session, where we're going to delve into our second half candidate insights report. And before I get started, can everybody just ping into the chat whether you can see and hear us all right? You should be able to see me and Alex and Gary. So just let us know you can see and hear us okay. I think we're also live on LinkedIn as well. Thanks, Jules. Thanks, Jamie. That's brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Ria. Brilliant. So good. Excellent. So welcome this morning. It's been an incredibly popular session, possibly our most yet. We've got about 130 odd people on this morning's session. So really glad there's so much interest in what candidates want. What their urges are, their demands are, their needs are, their motivations are. I'm going to delve into all of that this morning. Just by way of an introduction, I'm Giles. I'm Director of Strategic Development here at JobTrain. We are an applicant tracking system provider. So we work with a whole range of different customers right across sectors like the public sector, NHS, care, local, you name it. And we, over the course of the year, process probably millions of candidate applications across many thousands of vacancies. Gary will be able to share the exact data with you. And we, with access to all of that data, provides the potential for a lot of insight. So what we do is we actually survey a lot of the candidates that are applying for our clients' roles. We've got a sample size of about 7,000 candidates, and that is the basis for the market report that we produce twice a year. There is a link below our faces here if you're on Crowdcast to download the insights report. If you on LinkedIn, just give us a shout. We'll be happy to send you a copy following this session. So yeah, today is really, the report itself is pretty extensive if you download the report already. If you haven't, don't worry, we're going to make it nice and easy for you this morning. And we're going to essentially run through the candidate insights report. We'll share some slides. We're probably going to run a couple of polls at the moment, some that will be relevant to what we're going to be talking about. And what I'd say is this session is for you. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to pop them in the chat, or there is an ask a questions area as well. Without further ado, I think we will probably get started. So I've introduced me. I'm joined by Alex and Gary. Alex, would you like to do a quick intro?
Yeah, no worries. I'm Alex, the marketing coordinator. My colleague Laura is off on holiday, so I've been pushed into webinar mode to cover for her. I'm here really just because I'm the guy that's knee deep in the market reports whenever Gary puts them together to whip up stats and infographics and things like that to share on our socials. So I'm really the guy that finds it really, really interesting in the company. So Giles kindly let me jump on with you today.
Yeah, Alex, it's great to have you here. And Alex and Laura, who work with our marketing team, quite often sit behind the scenes. So we thought we'd mix it up a little bit this morning and bring Alex to the main stage, who may well have his own ideas, comments, thoughts, all the rest of it as we go through the session. And then finally to the man himself, Gary.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Talent Intelligence Director at JobTrain. So in terms of what talent intelligence means to us at JobTrain, we say it's leveraging the power of data to shape talent strategy, processes, systems. And so the data is really key. And we, as you alluded to, Giles, we pass around the data coming through our platform all the time. And we're privileged to be able to use that to understand what's going on, how do people apply, when did they apply, what works, what are clients doing, what are different sectors doing. And we can meld all that together and produce some very interesting reports. This is our, I think, 6th or 7th now. We do every 6 months for the last 3 years. And we channel a lot of the findings as well into our product development, making sure that our product is always staying cutting edge, that it's meeting the needs of candidates and recruiters. And it underpins our consultancy services as well, where we are working throughout the year with organizations to help them improve their talent acquisition methods and their systems and processes based on the insights we gather.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gary. And as we get started, and Alex is going to be driving in terms of the slides we run through and things, and we're just going to take a few snapshots from the candidate insights report this morning. We have got a couple of polls running as well, so please do get involved in those. If you're on Crowdcast, you'll see that just to your right-hand side. There's almost like a little graphic. Click on that, and then do please get involved in terms of sharing some of your ideas, both about application experience this morning, but also the use of rich media in adverts, and we'll explain the reasons for that and why it's relevant in a little while. But hopefully we can see the slides okay. Without that, Gary, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Giles. If anyone's already seen the report, this actually doesn't, some of this data to start with doesn't feature till later on in the report, but we brought it to the front as a bit of a scene setter, really, is to say, well, you know, what's actually driving the movement? You know, what are organisations doing versus what are candidates interested in, and what are they doing as well, to try and compare. We've seen some changes over the last few years of producing these reports. If anyone wants to remember back to the dark days of the pandemic and what that did, but as we came out of that, there was quite a difference around people looking for career changes, particularly an older age group over, dare I say, over 50s. That's how the ONS class it, rather than us. Looking for career changes, people moving sectors. And we've seen that settle down. So this latest information, it's interesting to see that for organisations, there's quite a steady balance, a traditional balance of looking for replacements versus new positions and growth. And there are sectors that have been reporting growth. Interesting, manufacturing. We reported only 2 months ago in one of our, if anyone signs up for our LinkedIn newsletter, Tic Tac, that we regularly publish information and articles in there, that some sectors like manufacturing were growing. Healthcare, social care have been expanding as well. So against that, well, what are the candidates interested in? If that career change movement has started to die down, what we've seen is much more growth towards career progression. So that segment has been getting bigger over the last few years and has now become quite the dominant choice. I think with career progression, it's quite a broad term. So I know Alex asked me when looking at these slides, hey, you know, why have you got promotion and career progression? There's quite a difference there. Only a small slice for progression, a large slice, small slice for promotion, higher slice for progression. Well, we put both terms out there to see how people might react. And I think progression in our mind was something a little bit broader. And I think it stems from our research, particularly into different age groups, that progression is broader in a sense that it doesn't necessarily mean an automatic promotion up the ladder to the rung above directly in what you do now, which perhaps might have been more of a traditional thing that people like myself or Giles might have experienced when we were younger and entering the workplace. So now it's much more around perhaps diagonal moves, even sideways moves to broaden skill sets. And I think we'll see as we go through some of the other answers that we've gathered from people, you can see that coming out in the things that they're looking for when they almost have like a mental shopping list, what they're looking for in a job. You can see things like the training development starting to be quite strong themes. So career progression, that's what we mean by that. It's a much broader focus.
This is purely analogous here, Gary, but just to kind of toss in my 2 cents, I'm looking at the 4% desire for home-based / flexible working. So it looks like quite a small percentage in comparison to the rest of the stats that we have here, but I think it's still quite an important one to bear in mind that if you're an organization that can do flexible working or offers it to some colleagues, it's a legal right for every employee in the UK to be able to ask for flexible working. Whether or not the organization needs to offer it is a different kettle of fish. But speaking about my sister's experience, she recently moved jobs for this exact reason. And when we were talking about what was it you were looking to get, was it more money? And she was like, no, I wanted to do some flexible working. And after moving role, she learned that her old job actually offered flexible working for her. And she simply never asked, just because it was an environment where she didn't think that she was allowed to. So, a lot of workers aren't necessarily aware of what they're allowed to ask for reasonably in an organization. So I just think it's quite interesting that there's 4% of people out there that might simply not know that you offer flexible working. and might not feel comfortable enough to ask if it's an option for them in their current workplace. And you might lose someone because of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and probably also helps perhaps underline when we look at this first page, and this is what is driving movement. So you're perhaps thinking about this as the number one thing that made someone go, right, I am now going to look for a job. It doesn't mean it's not important. In fact, all the data we've got later on in the slides shows just how much that flexibility is actually right at the top of people's decision making, but perhaps when they're further along in the recruitment life cycle. This is just almost like that motivation to look in the first place. We'll come on to what influences them once they do look. But I think the generational splits on page 3 are also the next page 2 are quite interesting, because you can see then that we've asked people around the idea of, are they going to stay in one profession? Or are they going to move around? And it might not come as a surprise to some, naturally when you're younger, you're perhaps not as set into your career as you are when you're older. So unsurprisingly, the Gen Z age group is showing much higher intention to move through different jobs. But we've seen this consistent now in a lot of other questions we ask or the research that we've gathered. In the last, if anyone saw our one back in January or back in July last year, you could see that we were looking at this more and more. But we've seen the side hustle die down a bit. We're not seeing that so much now. So we do have in our downloaded version some data on whether people will have more than one job. That has diminished. But the idea that they will move between jobs to build what we're calling almost the career Swiss Army knife, rather than thinking about the traditional career ladder that used to exist where you just go up the rungs. They're building more of a 360-degree rounded CV for themselves. And so that's part of the decision making. I'm going to move to different places to get that broadness of skill sets and experiences. And we can see then how that, from a recruiter point of view, how you might be able to play into that when it comes to influencing them with the contents of your adverts, career sites, things like that.
It's also quite a reassuring statistic, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at 49% agree and 16% strongly agree on the left-hand side there. 65% of colleagues are looking to change professions at some point in their working life, which means don't take it personally if someone comes to you and says, I'm moving on. So 65% of people are going to do that at some point, and it won't necessarily have much to do with the organization.
Absolutely. And again, we always have to think that we don't personally just sit here indulging ourselves in data for the sake of it. There is a purpose that we are always working with our customers to try and give them an edge, a competitive edge in the market, what they can do in the advertising, what they can do in the selection processes, to make sure they get the right people at the right time, and beat other companies to those best people. And replacements is just something that is part of the norm, but actually thinking further ahead and not just have, someone's left, we've got to react, let's just do what we can as fast as possible, but actually planning further ahead, thinking about some of these things. And it could be then that obviously thinking about internal movement, you're thinking more around your advertising strategy, the placement, the content, the messaging. So as we go through this, that's what we're always going to ask people, but we will sum it up at the end in a sort of simple action plan as an aid memoir.
Next slide.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, of course.
So in terms of staying in this line of work, this really just builds upon what we were just talking about in terms of that movement. And again, you can see here that there's an increasing split around people maybe not coming into jobs. If we go back 5-10 years, the idea it was always people turn up at interviews, I'm looking for a long-term career. This idea that people move around, and I think people might be scared or might get customers within their organization saying, well, do we want to invest in people if they're going to move quickly? We won't get our money back. But actually, a lot of these young people, particularly who've got this mindset, they're very, very sharp and intelligent, and they're building these skills quickly. So if it becomes a carousel, it's one that's actually beneficial to all, because actually you're going to be bringing people into business who've had training and development and exposure to skills and experiences that you can then benefit from. I don't think it should be seen as something that's off-putting. I think with some sectors, due to the things we've talked about, we have to be mindful, and there may be people listening and thinking, well, don't recognise this as part of our sector. We can't have people working from home, or movement doesn't quite suit us in some particular cases. So these are just the broad overall percentages that we're given and insights. We do have the data sector level sometimes as well, by types of occupation, job seniority levels. We can dive into within Job Train, and within the downloadable report we have put some sector splits as well. And it's interesting, if we move to the next slide, we've picked out one of those types of scenarios, which is that when looking at this reason for job seeking, why they're in the market, what they're looking for, you can see in some sectors, while some things are consistent, there are these occasional variances, such as things like relocation. And we like to think we've got all the answers, but sometimes we just don't know about extra research. So people watching this and thinking about what their organization has found or might find, sometimes you may have to dig a bit deeper. So why is it that perhaps relocation is higher in healthcare, as an example? Is that reflective of the fact that organizations are recruiting overseas, and so naturally the candidate is in the mindset, I'm going to relocate, and that brings an opportunity for a different career, different culture experience, a different, or hopefully, I presume, a greater earning potential? Is it actually on a national UK level? Is it that within healthcare, in this example, which has quite a high relocation column showing that they're moving because different NHS trusts, as an example, might offer different specialisms, or different hospitals have different specialisms and are looking to get a different experience. We have seen plenty of data around the rise in flexible working. I think the latest data, I think in our newsletter last month, was a report by Flexa. I think it's 48 or 58% off the top of my head, jobs now have some form of flexible working. Are people taking advantage of that to relocate to places that are more attractive places to live, as an example? Or we also published, I think 2 years ago, I think it was our July LinkedIn Tic Tac newsletter, that there's been the rise of the super commuter. So how people are making a conscious decision not to have the drudgery of a suburban commute, but a long distance commute, so like over an hour, maybe somewhere like a Manchester to London, or a Peterborough to London type of route, because they're recognizing that actually the flexibility of hours now becoming the norm. They can take a personal conscious decision to maybe have a longer day and do a dense 4-day week, or simply earn more because it's in London and there's different job potential, different earning potential to where they live, and they're prepared to accept that. So not always one answer, but getting to know your potential target candidates and understanding some of these motivations, that's going to help inform your advertising.
That one was really interesting, Gary, in that I guess as a consequence or a potential benefit of flexible working means that certain people have a motivation to have their place of work quite a long way away from home. And they're quite happy to travel maybe down to London for 1 or 2 days a week, whereas that gives employers access to even a wider pool of potential people that they wouldn't have had perhaps pre-pandemic with less flexible working.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's almost a more mature way of having an employer and employee relationship. And we did some really deep research into Gen Z, because we were looking at it from a client point of view. We're looking at it from a product development point of view a couple of years ago. And one thing that really stood out was the almost the much more mercenary and transactional mindset. You know, the recent announcements there's going to be legislation coming in to stop people looking at emails outside of work. Well, that's already been happening. You know, that's already been dying out in the younger generation because they have a very contract orientated mindset of, well, this is what I offer and do for you, and this is what you give me in return, whether that's, you know, pay or the benefits, softer benefits. And so there is a danger, particularly if we've got a gap between, let's say, the hiring manager community and then the candidate, perhaps in terms of that generational split. There can be a different mindset, and I think the recruiters need to be in tune with that, almost play a translation role, a liaison role between the two, because the idea that you might recruit in your own image, I think, is not going to be feasible in today's market.
Right. Let's move on.
So we put this one out. This is quite a hot topic, isn't it, for us in the last year? Isn't it? Giles, we get quite a lot of questions and inquiries from organizations around AI, quite open questions as well, don't we, in terms of what is it, you know, what can it do in recruitment? Is it good? Is it bad? And I presume, Alex, you've seen a lot of this in the press as well.
Yep. I'm a full disclosure for anybody watching along. I might turn some people away here, but I'm a borderline Luddite when it comes to AI at this point. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing about it. But it has its place. It has its place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we obviously include AI technology within the job training product, and it is there to make life easier. You know, whether that's automating processes to remove manual labor from the everyday lives of recruiters to make life easier. To say, as one example, you know, the good applications of AI, and then you get your more, you know, nefarious things emerging in the internet that I think recruiters, employers are perhaps worried about. But what about the candidates? You know, has anyone asked the candidates how they feel about AI? So we did. So we said, look, you know, is this a threat to you? Do you foresee the doomsday scenario that there's going to be no jobs for you because the world will be run by, you know, robots or computers doing everything? Or actually, is it an enabler? Some recruiters might be in the chat saying, well, you know, could enable them to cheat the system, cheat the selection. But we just asked it as an open question. And I think it's quite interesting how it's probably more of a positive skew that many people feeling that that AI can be a good enabler. And we conclude some wider research here. We put some examples in of how some organizations, like IKEA, this one here, has benefited from this, and has been able to reassign people. We also recently published an article about how IKEA's actually opened its first Roblox-based store. So if anyone hasn't come across this, this is software, a game for people, started with kids mainly, but I think has encompassed adults as well. A bit like a Minecraft type of addiction type of game where you can build worlds, operating worlds. They've opened a store. So they're doing their recruitment now in Roblox, and they're employing people to work in Roblox, serving customers in virtual avatars. You know, so there can be really quite imaginative uses for some of this. And I think from a candidate point of view, it can be practical to assist, whether that's helping them assist getting the very best out of what they have done on their CV and articulate it in a way that is attractive to employers. Shouldn't be, I don't think, perceived as a negative. But rather than trying to debate the pros and cons and come down on one side, for us, we were trying to understand, is this something that is worrying candidates? But it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be quite a positive embrace of the technology.
Yeah, I think what stands out to me here is that you've got a massive, overwhelming 83% of candidates saying that they felt there was a need to adjust and to acquire new skills. So there's two opportunities there. The first is that organizations should be putting in place clear upskilling capability for all their employees to use and benefit from using AI. And obviously, consequential benefit there is massive increase in productivity, efficiency, all the good stuff. So that's something to be mindful of for everybody here.
Absolutely, Charles. And what you've done there is join the dots, which is a term we use quite a lot in our team, which is putting these things together. So you've already looped back there to the beginning with that suggestion, which is we covered people's motivations, progression, thinking about acquiring new skills. So this could be one of those things that you factor in to your offering when you're going out to market and advertising your jobs. Hey, we offer exposure to this technology or the training behind this, and then that's going to obviously ring people's bells and then get them interested.
Great. What's next?
Coming up.
I mean, we've talked a lot about the motivation of looking for jobs so far. So what we've done is now thinking further down the recruitment funnel. They're out there, they've started looking. What's actually going to influence them to apply? And so we're interested in what did influence the candidates that applied. And we can see that the description in the job advert is the leading answer. Candidates could choose different things here, but for most people, the description of the job in the advert. But it's important. Further research done shows if you just paste a job description in the advert, it's not go down very well. People are busy, they're rushing. We see this quite a lot. Job descriptions just get pasted, and that's it. Off it goes. Really have to think here like a marketeer or an advertiser, or get in the mindset of the candidate based on those things we've already discussed, and make sure that resonates to them and it stands out very clearly. So write the adverts from scratch. And we have a saying here, I'm sure it's a famous saying elsewhere in the world as well, but sell the sizzle, not the steak. And what we mean by that is, what are those things that will attract them? Like we just talked about, the training opportunities, the exposures to some great new project or great new technology, and the chance to make a difference in the role. If that's a difference to people in the organization, a difference to your customers or patients, if it's in a care scenario, something that's really going to attract them based on those motivations and desires that those candidates have. Maybe it's talking about the great flexibility you offer in your hours or other holidays and things like that. Again, because we've seen that as motivations for people. Yeah. So that's what we'd say there. And we can see as well here other interesting things. I think, Alex, you commented to me how you thought it was interesting about Glassdoor still being quite prominent.
Yep.
A source of reference for people.
Our colleague Jules has also pointed out in the chat here, Gary, Glassdoor 21%. Interesting. It's Marmite. Many people I speak to say they just don't have the resource to keep on top of Glassdoor and respond to candidates individually as well, which is pretty spot on, I think. I mean, I would be fascinated to know how many people agree with Jules because that we have in the chat right now, because that would be my reading. It is almost a full-time job to keep up to date with your social media presence and how people perceive you, especially for your larger organizations.
It is, but if you're running a bar or a restaurant, a lot of them will live or die by the ratings that they receive via, TripAdvisor and other review sites. So whilst I was initially really surprised that 21% of the respondents said like a Glassdoor rating would influence me to apply or not, it just almost like showcases the importance of recruiters and of organizations of keeping on top of Glassdoor and responding to people in exactly the same way as any other sort of service or product type company would do on review sites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we combine some of these stats as well, I mean, combined, we've got the description of the job in the advert, the organization's website or career site, and the description of the salary and or benefits in the advert. That's 51% of respondents saying that the job advert is a key influencer there. That's over half, just over half, but it's just over half, 51%. We're going to talk a bit about job adverts in a few minutes, but I think that's really important. There's sometimes a bit of a assumption that a job advert doesn't really matter because the candidate will just see it and Indeed, click, boof, off to the next one and on to the next job. But 51% of candidates are telling us, no, they care about what's in that advert. And we've got some stats coming up that'll point out particularly what they're looking for in the advert, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think as well, people might think, God, this sounds like a lot to do. We're very busy in our roles, so I think that bit around website and careers site is also worth bearing in mind. That yes, stuff in the advert that will be pushed out, whether that's like through our systems where it gets pushed out to big job board aggregators, big job boards, you Indeeds, you optimize for Google Jobs, job board marketplaces. We can put it on different job boards. Those types of tools, they're pushing it out to somewhere else. But when they're in your actual system, they're in your careers portal. Those pages supplement the learning. They support the investigation that those candidates are making into your organization, what you offer. So there's other areas as well that you can keep a sort of standing amount of information on an ongoing basis that will complement what you put in the adverts. And what we've touched on here and further detail in the report is it's those themes of the career progression, the training, the opportunities, the lifestyle flexibility, and so we've not touched on yet as well. But the influence of things like ED&I is quite strong nowadays as well. So
yes,
as you say, we will come on to that. But if anyone's thinking, well, it's a lot to try and cram in, it could be a lot of content, a lot of writing. Well, one of the great things we've seen is how videos can support this. So if we move on to the next couple of slides to just follow this through. ED&I, that's the question we've asked them quite directly and quite consistently now for a few years. And it's really quite strong. People say that this matters to them. And I don't think this is surprising anyone to me personally. We do a lot of research gathering, as I said, and we see a lot of articles, a lot of other data research surveys that companies and organizations have done. You see it in the press. You see it also on the street reflected in everyday people. You may see it already in your organization reflected in your colleagues. There is a different mindset, different approach. But people don't want some sort of token gesture of a certain type of photograph or picture on that. It's actually got to be something with substance behind it. And if anyone wants to go back on through our website for some of our previous research, and this time last year, July 2023, we did a bit more insight into things like benefits. We were looking at different benefits appealing to different age groups. We started to see much more the impact of ED&I around that time and how it interacts with some of those other types of things. So thinking a bit broader, as an example, it might be that your diversity is around your diversity of your age groups.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest drop off during the pandemic was over 50s ONS, that something like 75% left the job market, probably not through their own doing, but they did. And there was a slow return into the marketplace. But as they came back into the marketplace, I think the ONS data said about half were looking for part-time work or some sort of reduced or flexible hours. But just going back to that point around how you position the hours, or whether it's things that like a more flexible holiday or increased holiday patterns, term time holiday patterns, or working patterns. I've heard the term grandparent leave, which obviously might be an older age group again, but it might not be the first thing you think about when you think about ED&I. However, about diversity, there are a lot of facets to it. So you can start to broaden out your thinking and understand how those practices are actually the substance, not just a token gesture.
An easy win to almost just start today as well would just be your organization will have an ED&I policy. Attach it to your job advert. I mean, 91% of candidates are saying that they're keeping an eye on it. So just attach it to your job advert so that they can see transparently what you preach. And then exactly what Gary said, which is, I mean, we'll move on to images and video in a second, but through images and video, if you can, practice what you preach. Show off the diversity of the organization without it looking like pandering, which is it's a tricky balance to strike, but it's a necessary one for that.
Yeah. It's easy enough to show and demonstrate and at least communicate your commitment to inclusion, for example. And that's something you can really easily do on your careers page, your website. And better still, as Alex said, bring it to life using video.
Yeah, I mean, ideally as a recruiter, what I'd want is my own content management system powering my career site, so that any time I can flexibly change the imagery, change the content, and keep it fresh and moving as we learn new things, or we change particular focus on certain types of recruitment. We mentioned videos. But we think this is a very powerful stat, and we've been monitoring this for some time now. We're quite confident it's quite a consistent stat that we get, and it's the power of video to convey a lot of this stuff we're talking about. We talked earlier about Glassdoor. How do you stay on top of it? Well, if you're doing things well as an organisation, your employees and your workforce are happy, you might have lower attrition, but those that lead might lead positively. They might be advocates for your company even after they've left. If you think that more people are going to move around more commonly now, according to what people are motivated to do. So maybe they feature in your videos and they give that first-hand experience about how they have been empowered to succeed in what they've wanted to achieve in the role, and how the organisation has supported that, give insights into the role. Not only might it woo people to say, yeah, you're my number one organisation I want to join, but conversely, it could also put people off in a way that benefits you, because some people might deselect and say, do you know what? I've realised now that job isn't what I thought it was. It's not for me. So the saving wasting their time, the saving wasting your time, only for them to pull out later on in the process or get rejected. So videos can convey a lot more information quickly. It's a different way of absorbing information. If people aren't particularly into reading or heavy reading, and they can see visually, they describe, it's a different way of intaking information. That again links with diversity in a way because of accessibility. It's a different way of absorbing information. And what we've seen is the power to increase the quality. There was other research done by other organisations on this. Career Builder was a massive organisation, particularly stateside, and they found that it increased candidate volume. So the average applicants per vacancy increased by, I think it said 34% from memory. Our research is focused more on the quality because of those other types of research that have been done. And we found that essentially you get way less rejections application. So it's boosting the quality, and that's also saving you time. Great if your system automates auto rejects. I know we can do it in JobTrain, we can auto reject the candidates based on set criteria. If someone is manually screening the applications, they keep having to reject people because they're not meeting what they want. The fact that videos influences it so that, and the quality or suitability, that means that word suitability increases, then not only are you saving time, but you're getting a better, healthier pot of quality candidates, maybe giving the manager a more difficult task to choose who's best.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, ultimately, we live in an age of visual media. So the whole idea of running any kind of advertisement without something to lift it in the form of an image or better still a video, and, to Alex's point, on the basis that, pictures tell 1,000 words, use video and it can convey so much more information and so much more engaging. They're not difficult to produce either. It doesn't need to cost a fortune. Obviously, if you have the budget, then it's amazing to be able to engage with a great, recruitment comms agency to produce videos for you. But we like to try and practice what we preach here at JobTrain. We've produced our own. We've been hiring recently, both for people in our support team, but also somebody into the commercial team as well. We wanted to make sure we tried to convey an idea about what it's like to work within JobTrain. So we did produce a video. I think we've got that, haven't we, Alex? So we'll just play the video quickly just to give you an idea about what that might look like.
Yeah, of course. This is going to feel a little bit like, I don't know if anybody's seen the meme of President Obama giving himself the medal, but this is probably what this is going to feel like for me because I'm the voiceover, but it's just coming up now.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Can I double check? Can you see this? Because I can't see you guys anymore.
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to press play.
So you're thinking of joining us at JobTrain. You're probably wondering what it's like. Well,
we're driving cars on a Mars tonight. We're passing up to the stars tonight. We wanna go. We wanna go.
Hi, Jill.
Thanks, Alex. We lost a little bit of the sound on that, and so when you try and share stuff and things, but it cost us very little to produce that video. We invested in a video camera and some microphones, and that was pretty much it. So that's all I did on that. Go on, Gary.
I was going to say on that point, Giles, if people think about cost, it cost a lot to produce, and as you say, it didn't really. But also, focusing your efforts is a way of reducing the cost aspect. And one of the things that is interesting, we come across quite a lot actually when we actually go in and work with organisations. Maybe we're doing an audit of their recruitment, try and see where they're at and understand the gap analysis of where they want to get to. We often look at one of the first things I like to look at is what are they recruiting, what's the volumes, what's the patterns, things like that. And people often base their whole budgets or workforce, it'll be based on we recruit X amount of positions a year. I'm always interested in what are they, and often we find when we drill into it, we maybe group together some of the roles, which may be called different things, but I'm saying quite often 80% of the recruitment is the same handful, the same 10 types of role. It's the same thing over and over again. So what you can do is look for the similarities and the overlaps in a lot of the recruitment and focus your initial efforts on those, because you'll be able to get more mileage out of them for less effort and money as well.
Well, thanks, Gary. So I think we're probably about 3/4 of the way through in terms of the slides we're going to share with you today. And I think we're moving on to, this is probably my favorite slides, because so much is talked about, especially in sort of key sectors with care where, salary is incredibly competitive, organizations really struggle in terms of budget. But this is fantastic news for any employer in terms of the motivations for people. And bear in mind, the survey data was taken across 7,000 job seekers across multiple industries. So it's not specific to one industry or one demographic at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to where you started with, Alex, your question around the segments on the first page and the motivations. And flexibility wasn't a primary driver, only for a small percentage, but how it makes a difference once they're actually in the funnel and thinking about the job. So the worst time in recruitment is to lose people at offer. You've spent all that time, that's gone to waste. You've spent the money, that's gone potential waste. What's going to make the difference? What if other people compete for that candidate? What's going to make the difference? Give you that competitive edge. And traditionally, it'd be offering more money, but we've been asking this question and finding the same answer. No, it's not necessarily the case that work-life balance plays a significant part. And I think we can read into this that it's not going to be 100% A versus B. It's going to be a blend, but we get an insight into the mindset of people. So it might be that work-life balance would also mean some of the things we've talked about, like the softer benefits, training and things. They're making a more informed choice. So it isn't just a bidding war. It's more of an engagement piece. That's really, really crucial. So when you get to offer, how are you really engaging those candidates? What information are you giving them? Is it just an offer letter? Is it an offer letter and a contract? Or is it some sort of information pack, whether that's conveyed paper, electronically, online, something that really brings them into the organization, gets them immersed in what you're offering, in that role, in that team, in that department, in the company as a whole. And I think that's what we take away from that. That's something now to really think about, and it links up nicely with what we've been finding in the survey questions for the motivations further up in the recruitment funnel.
I think the next slide is one that you're particularly passionate about, Giles. Do you want me to jump into it?
Yeah, go for it. Surprise. And it won't surprise you that we asked this question in the poll about how many of you who were with us on the webinar today have actually gone through and tested your own application experience for both usability, whether that's testing it on a different device like mobiles, tablets, PCs, what have you, different browsers, but also is it easy to follow? Are there any potential blockers in there? And critically, how long does it take to complete that ultimately transaction? Not unlike e-commerce or anything else. people's attention spans and willingness to spend a lot of time completing applications has decreased, and not least because they are more often than not using these. Over 80% of people are at least starting their job search on a mobile. And whilst I can't remember the data now, Gary might be able to help me out here. Whilst a lot of them didn't necessarily, this is actually using job train, it's a little bit skewed, but whilst a lot of them didn't necessarily expect to be able to complete on a mobile, the majority probably did complete using a mobile as well. And people just simply aren't willing to invest an awful lot of time completing lengthy application forms using a mobile. You can always split that application experience into a couple of stages. Take the basics first and then ask for more information when you need it. But yeah, this is quite surprising.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the stat you were trying to think of was, which is in the downloadable version, is the 71% applying on mobile now. Yeah,
thank you.
Where you see that suddenly, like, oh, I wish it was like, it's these sectors, and I think the overlaid with the average applications for vacancy data, there is direct correlation between that. It's undeniable that the longer, more complex application, the application process, you get less applicants, and you've got to think about your competitors as well. We published information last year around how retail, leisure, and hospitality were really up in the game. Easier applications, really great advertising, and increasing paywalls, particularly in the supermarket sector. It's pulling people from, unfortunately, out of healthcare, and social care, which are really vital industries, sectors for our country, for us all as people. We need those services, and people will leave them to go into supermarkets and retail, etc. So it's got to be thought about carefully.
Work to be done.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know from working with companies where we've done this, it has a massive impact. There's a great case of an Isle of Man government where they've got 100% candidate satisfaction because they regularly survey candidates. How did you find the experience? And it just went through the roof when they moved to a slimmed down, slicker application process. There's no reason you can't gather more information later on when you want to take them to interview or you want to take them to the offer stage. Ask for a bit more if you need it. Maybe it's part of regulations. Regulatory compliance is often around referencing. We don't reference people if you reject them, so why gather it up front? So those practicalities, they are easy to achieve, even if you're getting pushed back in the business to say, oh no, we need X, Y, and Z. It's just making people understand internally for for your customers that we can still achieve it, but we're just doing it in a slightly different way at different time.
Yeah, for sure. And we're not suggesting that, everybody should invite high volumes of people applying. It's just don't put barriers in place with people. You've got, you've got accessibility and inclusion to think about when you're inviting applications. And you can easily use things like, if you've got an ATS, using things like scored assessment forms. So if you want to ask things like multiple choice questionnaires or use screening questions, so it might be all out, what we sometimes call killer questions, or it might be values-based or skills-based questionnaires that then produces a score behind it to make it easier for you to see who's particularly strong or who shows most promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the old classic: what's essential, what's desirable, and trying to get that. We're data people, so we hate free text. We always want everything summarized. It's a tick box. Now that is easier, I feel, for candidates if they're ticking things and picking things. But we can produce then weighted, ranked shortlists with scores. It's so objective. You've got no issue then on inequality, on fairness in process, because if you've got the research plan and you've set the right type of criteria for the job, then it's very justifiable, and you've got very objective shortlisting going on.
Well, so I think we're down to almost the last two slides now, aren't we?
Yeah, well, it's just continuing, in the funnel. We've understood the motivations, we've understood how to influence them to pick us as the organisation to apply to, and then that application experience, just continuing that. Well, on the back of what we just discussed, we asked people around alternative methods. Is actually filling out on a keyboard or a phone or an application the way to do things? So we put forward, and we've seen this in some sectors, trial, would you like to apply via a chatbot, or would you like to apply uploading the video. And it came as a bit of a surprise, but we got quite a resounding no. And we've seen this now over 12 months. It's still a resounding no. So no, that's, it's as simple as that, really. And it's interesting because we've been aware of articles or events that we've been to, and there's been speakers talking about how perhaps applying by video, might empower the neurodiverse and people who struggle with reading and writing for whatever that reason might be. And we've seen that at video interview stage, because we've always offered video interviews in our platform, but video applications, but the voice of the candidate is currently no, it doesn't seem to be. And perhaps that maybe it's because, particularly in the sectors we often work in, there's a demand for accessible career solutions like JobTrain, tools like Recite Accessibility Toolbar, which we use as well, so that people are actually supported already to apply in a way that facilitates an accessible format and experience through the whole application and interaction within the online candidate portal. So could it be that? We don't know for sure. We'd have to delve into it further, but it just seems to be a resounding no, that people aren't keen on these ideas, particularly chatbots as well. Not resonating with people.
If anybody wants to take something from this that they can look up themselves that might find it quite interesting, GPT vetting. It's effectively AI interviewing, where you are interviewed on camera by an AI robot. It's a new bit of tech that personally I find a little bit disturbing, but some others might find it quite an interesting and fascinating means of moving forwards. But I think one thing to take from this slide, if it's anything, is that things like chatbots or things like videos for that application process, if you're going to do it, it should be an option, not mandatory for everyone. You will lose candidates and you will turn people away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And looping back briefly to the AI thing, where we've had organizations say, what people try and cheat answers using AI. Going back to those streamlined application forms and using more of a, straight questions, tick boxes, drop downs, those types of things, they're less likely to be prone to that. If you give someone, like in the graduate recruitment world, you've got 10,000 words to write the perfect answer of why you'd be the great hire for our graduate scheme, then yeah, ChatGPT is going to eat that up for breakfast. But if it's picking things, then we don't see any issues in our systems with that.
Great.
So I think, but ultimately, accessibility, we touched on it a few times, and we just touched on it then, but it was just a very powerful bit of information, almost a bit of a crusade that we've had for a good few years now at JobTrain, and along with our partners at Recite, who inspired us with their great research. But 2.2 billion people globally with visual impairment. British Dyslexia Association estimates 10% of the UK are dyslexic. And you've got to think about that, with the online application portal. So tools are out there, accessibility toolbars, websites being accessible. It's something that as a recruiter you need to be mindful of. And then going back to those videos as well, if you're going to take up the idea of the videos, which we recommended, making sure you've got some form of transcript, and taking Alex's point, never always rest everything on one solution. Have a blend of different approaches, different formats of information, and it's obviously going to try and cater for a wide range of people.
Yep. Last slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we said earlier that it's not just an indulgence in data for the sake of it. It's trying to turn it into actionable actions that make a difference, and we distilled this into a short action plan for success. I won't read through these one by one, but this is something that we're often employing in the work we do with our clients, whether that's clients implementing JobTrain for the first time, or organizations who've been, as we're often proud of, that have been working with us for many, many years, often over 10 years, as a successful partnership. revisiting, refreshing, wanting to improve how they do things. And when we're working with them, these are the kind of things that we see making a difference. So there is substance behind them, both in terms of the insights in the research, but also our experience of having employed a lot of these previously.
Thanks, Gary, very much indeed, and thanks, Alex, too. So that's concluding our session for this morning. Huge thanks to both you, Gary, and Alex as well for your input today, and thanks for everybody for joining us as well. So today was all about looking at job seeker experience and motivations as a nice, neat little segue. Our next session is actually looking at employee motivations. I'm back on the 18th of September at 11 o'clock to run a webinar with Maureen Brown, who's the founder and CEO of MySay. Now, MySay are an organisation that specifically look at employee listening and research, and Maureen's got a load of data to share all about what people are currently saying about the joining experience they have when they're joining a new business, their expectations versus their actual experience once they've joined in terms of onboarding and induction and stuff. The primary reasons a lot of people join an organisation, but also why they're leaving as well, and how to close that disconnect between the recruitment experience, which sometimes sells a bit of a dream, versus the actual employee experience once they join. And then we're going to start talking about things like how to foster a culture of advocacy on the basis that people will leave an organisation. How do we turn them into real fans? And then finally looking at how we can use data as part of people's exit interviews to become the start of a really good recruitment strategy. So I'm just going to pop a link into the chat here. If you want to join that session, we'd love to see you. But thank you so much to all of you for joining us. We hope you got some value from it. Have a really good week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.